Dominic Addy here with Stare Down TV. I'm here with the new Cage Warriors Academy 145 champion, Jimmy the Tomahawk Fell. Jimmy, mate, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. I didn't win no titles lately, but I'm doing pretty good. So, sort of before we go straight into last week and everything like that, we had a chat earlier on in the year, and you said, you wanted to have 4 titles by the end of the year. Obviously, you weren't including things like injuries and stuff like that, and like timeout. So far, you've had 2. You won the Contenders title before the Cage Warriors title, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then, so you've ended the year with 2 titles. Still a very good feat. Sort of going into the Cage Warriors fight, then there's a lot of talk about your opponent, George Tenasa. He had a big name around him, good record like yourself. You were 4-1, I believe he was 6-1. He had some good finishes, like body kick finishes, everything like that. How did this fight come ahead? Like, tell me sort of the lead up to this fight.
To be honest, me and Windy, my coach, we were chasing the title fight anyway because we're always trying to push and get as far as we can. So we put it to Jack Mason, and we ended up with a #1 contender fight against. It was meant to be against Hamza Hindi, but it ended up being against Sullivan Kerner at the last moment, and I managed to win that. It was a very, very tough fight actually, but I did manage to pull that one off. So obviously, then the fight with George was made.
Yeah, and then from there, but then you had a fight in between that, right? And that was a Contenders fight.
I did, yeah. Again, we've been chasing the Contenders title for a long, long time, and the guy who used to have it, he decided to turn professional. So we obviously went for that belt, but they had trouble finding us an opponent who wanted to fight for it. So we ended up getting Lee Miller from Reps MMA, who's in Preston, so about 4 hours away. Obviously, Lee, again, very good fighter. It was a fight for the belt, so.
Nice, mate. And so obviously that gave you the momentum to go into that. So what did you know about George sort of in the lead up? Did you know the name well?
Yeah, we knew the name well. It was funny, actually. I'd actually seen George on the cover of the programme the first time I fought on Cage Warriors last year. And I thought, Jesus Christ, that guy looks like a serial killer. I wonder if I'd ever end up fighting him. And sure enough, I did. We knew George was a very good wrestler. We knew he was very, very strong. And he had real powerful striking. Like with everyone though, we studied George, we saw what his weaknesses were, and we went in to exploit them. And that's just what we did, really. It's what we do with everyone. So. Yeah.
Well, I first heard of George. I heard the name, but the first time I sort of saw him fight was against Will Timmis, and I was like, this guy's good. What is going to need someone to? He's going to need people to push him, and like Will pushed him, and obviously yourself. When you got a nickname like the Son of Dracula, he's you're. It's saying there he's ready to go from the get-go. So was that the game plan, like you say, because he's got good wrestling and good stand-up, he's studying him. What was the game plan really going into that?
The game plan with that really, George has got very good stand-up, but we found it to be a little bit predictable. Not knocking George at all. He was very, very strong, very, very powerful, but he was a little bit predictable. We noticed the patterns and the strikes he likes to throw. He's working around those on his feet. And we knew that if we started to get the better of the stand-up, that George we knew he'd shoot and take it to the ground. To be honest with you, on the ground, I was more than happy to take George there. I'm a jiu-jitsu purple belt. I've seen George, his submissions aren't the best. His wrestling is a lot more dominant on the ground. So I was quite happy for George to take it to the floor. And as you saw in the fight, every time he took me down, he immediately wanted to stand back up or I'd sweep him. So, we were quite comfortable everywhere, really. But the main game plan actually was just to set a high pace and just tire George out. He's a very explosive guy. It takes a lot of energy, and towards the end of the fight, he was fading. So that was the game plan there.
But that's it. When an athlete, you see the fights when they got like that fast twitch muscle. It does take a lot of explosion. It's a dangerous thing to have at any point. But if you can neutralize that, it definitely comes into your play. Obviously, I believe George fights at BKK, so I imagine he had a big crowd behind him.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was quite funny actually. I had quite a big crowd with me as well. I think I sold about 70 tickets for that fight. They put all of George's tables and all of his supporters right behind my corner.
Really?
And then all of my supporters were right behind George's corner as well. So it was pretty mad when we was in there. I was really excited to actually get in there on the night because I could hear how mad the crowd was going before me and George were in there. So I knew it'd be insane when we got in the cage.
Yeah, and that's it. What about backstage? Obviously, there was a lot of BKK fighters on the card. For yourself, was it, that people obviously going to support their guy, but was it respectful? What's the atmosphere like backstage?
Oh yeah, no, it was all cool. The BKK guys, they're all great.
Yeah.
We way because they're sort of assistant gym to ours. They just do what they do. They were more focused on all their teammates and getting them through their fights rather than having any sort of problem with me or anyone else. It's not what it's about. It's just about going out there and doing what we love to do.
Yeah. And then from that, having the photo, you see the photos of you holding the belt and stuff. Which belt do you prefer, honestly, the Contender or the Cage Warriors belt?
I like gold, so I do prefer the Cage Warriors belt. The Contenders belt is very nice, but I do like gold. So.
That's it. And then, so, once you win, you beat one of their top guys in BKK, you won the belt and stuff. Has there been any discussion about what's next for you? Like, has there been any talks?
Yeah, we're still in the sort of process at the moment of having a chat about things. We're gonna have at the moment we're still kind of a little bit high from the winning the fight and winning the belt, so we're going to give it a couple of weeks. Let me have a bit of a break, and then we're going to address it properly. But there have been a few talks about going pro or going back to do the IMAF stuff or something similar. We're just unsure yet. We just want to make sure we make the right decision.
Yeah, well, that's it, mate. Like I said, now that you're in the driving seat now, you're a two organisation champ, so sort of the world is your oyster. For yourself, then, if you sort of had to answer right now, it's very hard to answer. Are you done fighting for the rest of the year? Do you believe?
Unless a very, very good fight comes up, then yeah, I'm done. But yeah, 99% sure I'm done fighting this year.
Well, mate, what a way to finish off the year as it is. And then sort of going on to the next stage of 2020, like you say, it's all being discussed right now. Would a rematch be an possibility, or are you have you got opponents in mind if you are to stay in the amateur game a little bit longer?
I mean, a rematch with George. I know George is dying for a rematch because he's already putting it out on Facebook and things like that. I wouldn't have a problem fighting George. Do I want to fight him again immediately? I don't know because all due respect to George, it wasn't like it was a split decision, really close fight that could have gone either way. It was quite clearly my fight. If it had gone on any longer, George was lucky not to get stopped in the second round, and I think in the third round, if I'd been on his back a bit early, he'd have been stopped again. So I've got no issue giving George a rematch, but whether or not it'll be immediate, I don't know.
But that's the kind of thing, when you fight somebody who's considered, George is considered up there on the elite of the amateur game right now. And like you say, when you beat somebody like that who's got a name and, like you say, it was a pretty decisive decision, any fighting other contenders, you're now in the driving seat. So for you, do you leave that completely up to your coach? Or how does that work in terms of picking the fight?
Me and Wendy always discuss it, but ultimately I'll always leave the final decision up to him. He knows best. He's always got my best interests at heart. Sometimes I can make decisions a little bit more rash, maybe, but we'll always discuss it. But then I always give Wendy the final decision. So,
and that's the best way of doing it. So for yourself now, go ahead.
Go.
No, so for yourself now, obviously, if you are sort of like you say, you're pretty much done for the year. Have you got any other guys from the gym coming up this year? Like, as in any big fights you need to work towards?
Yeah, next week we've got Callum Cunningham. He's a heavyweight fighting on Impact Fight UK in Wisbech. That's a good little local show. That'll be his second fight, and he's got a guy from AJ Jeffrey's gym, which is I'm trying to remember the name of their gym now. I can't remember it, but they're a gym for the real strong athletic guys. That's going to be a really good fight, especially at heavyweight. And then we've also got Callum's brother Cameron, who again is just a freak of an athlete. These two have got the best genetics I've ever seen. It's quite angering really to see what they can do. He's hopefully fighting for the 70-kilo belt on Contenders. Again, they're just struggling to find Cameron an opponent at the moment.
Nice, man. That should be good. And then sort of see yourself. I remember we talked briefly about sort of weight cuts and stuff like that in our talk earlier this year. How was the cut to 145? I remember you were thinking, potentially change things up at some point in terms of how you do it and your strength and conditioning. How is it all going?
Yeah, no, it went really well. It was, the easiest time I've had making weight. The fight camp went perfectly. No injuries, no nothing. I was really good in fight camp. Usually, I'm always struggling in fight camp, just because obviously we're trying to push it. But I was coasting through it, no problem at all. The weight was the easiest I've ever done it. I was eating the day before weigh-ins, no problem at all. Got to the weigh-in and I was fine. I was quite happy to sit there and wait, but we jumped straight on the scales. I didn't have any issues. I have changed things up a little bit as to how I do it. I was doing a lot more strength and conditioning this time just because George was so strong. I also watched a lot of Mike Dolce's videos, and I did a lot of the stuff that he does for his guys during the weight cut. And again, it worked like a charm. So
When you say that in terms of what exercises or his diet and stuff, 'cause I know he's
the way he does his diet, the way like the meal timings, things like that. Like on the week of the fight, he'll have his guys eating rather than sort of 3 meals a day, they'll go to 6 meals a day. And then for the last few days, they won't be eating meals, they'll just be eating sort of handfuls of food every hour or so. So again, real small amounts of it. And I don't know how it works. I don't really care. It worked really, really well. I wasn't hungry. I felt great. The weight came off, and I woke up on weigh-in day, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm on weight.
Yeah. That's it. I remember his Joe Rogan podcast a couple of years ago. He was talking about that. He said if you keep the metabolism going and you constantly give it little bits, your body's just going to keep reacting to it. Whereas if you ate, stopped, and then when you eat again, your body's going to just hold on to things. So he just wants to keep it growing. So it's a smart way of doing it, mate.
Podcast with Joe Rogan. So that was really good, and that really, really helps. That's definitely something I'll keep doing in the future.
I can imagine, mate. I really can. So sort of take a little step away from it. Obviously, there's some big news coming out on the MMA world, you know, about Nate and Masvidal. Have you heard about that?
I've heard about him testing with elevated levels or something. I see that last night, which I thought sounds a bit funny to me, to be honest with you. They said he's tested pot with elevated levels or something, but don't worry about it. It's probably from tainted supplements, which is like, if he has tested positive, why are you giving him the reason as to why that is? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't sound right to me. Surely he should be the one coming up with the excuse.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. That was the weird thing. Only Nate came out. The UFC haven't said anything. USADA haven't said anything. It's just been completely Nate saying that. Masvidal coming out saying, nope, the fight's still on. It's like in between. They're like the co-promoters or something. It's a weird one. Yeah. Apparently they're saying that the UFC had somebody on standby the whole time, and that was Leon Edwards. He's been in fight camp. That's why he's not been matched, because he's been in fight camp if anyone's to drop out. Obviously, everyone wants to see this fight. For you yourself, were you looking forward to? It still might be happening. It's not been scrapped yet. For yourself, who would you fancy in that fight? Should it go ahead?
I mean, that is a real 50-50 fight. I think that could go either way, but I'm a Diaz fan. I've got to go with Diaz.
What method?
I'd probably say submission maybe later on. Just the thing with Diaz is it's just he can go all day long. You know, he's got a chin of granite. You know, it's just impossible to stop that guy, and he will just fight all day long. So I've got to go with Diaz on it.
Nice, mate. And what about the co-main? What about Darren Till versus Kelvin Gastelum?
Again, that's a tough one because it's all to lose for, or it's all to win or lose for Darren Till now, isn't it? What is he? 2 or 3 losses in a row now?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah, 2 losses in a row now. Hopefully he can pull it off, because I like Darren Till, but you know, when you're on a bit of a slump like that, it's quite easy to lose your confidence, get a bit gun shy. So I'm a bit 50-50 on that one, to be honest with you.
Well, that's it. Talking about sort of going on the back of that, going back to yourself. So you lost was it your second amateur fight or your third amateur fight?
Third one.
And so, you know, coming back, what was the mindset after that, going into like fight camp for the fourth?
Going into mindset for the fourth one, it was just a case of trying to manage what made me lose the fight in the first place. And the fight I lost was in the IMAFs against the guy who eventually won the bronze medal. So I sort of, afterwards, I sort of looked back and I thought, you know what, it weren't like I lost to a mug. You know what I mean? I lost to a very good fighter in a very, very stressful situation doing the IMAFs for the first time. And I just sort of looked at it and said, look, the reason I lost, I let the pressure and the adrenaline get to me. I've just got to control that for next time. So I've worked with some of my sponsors, and we've done some like sort of stress management stuff, and done a lot of the Wim Hof breathing method, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing an interview with them later on today about that as well. And that's made a huge difference to the way I prepare for fights and my mental state going up to it. If you watch the fight with George, you can hear one of the commentators say, if I was any more relaxed, I'd be asleep. And that's purely down to doing the stuff that I've done with the Wim Hof method. It just completely takes all the adrenaline and all the nervous energy away for me.
And how like when are you doing that? Are you doing that sort of throughout the day or just before you go out? Like when?
I tend to do it just as and when. I do the sort of the ice bath stuff the day of the fight, the morning of. Again, that just helps me sort of control all the nervous energy and things like that. But then the breathing method and the breathing technique, anytime I feel any sort of butterflies in the stomach or any kind of nervous tension, I just do that for a few minutes and it all just melts away and I feel great. You know, I was doing it during the warm up out the back, and then when we walked through backstage just before we come out, I was doing it then as well because the fight before me went the full distance. So I was out there for a good sort of 10, 15 minutes. And again, it just helps get rid of all that nervous tension, you know, and it makes a huge difference to me. So.
And just kind of like brief overview, I know there's more to it than that, but the actual technique is like is it like, how many breaths is it in and out? Like if some people that are watching who don't know who Wim Hof is.
Right, yeah. Well, there's two techniques he does. The one is the ice bath method, which is literally where you sit in a bath of ice and you have to use your breathing to be able to feel comfortable in the ice bath. Like I can sit in there now and I actually feel quite warm and quite comfortable. I'm not cold or anything. I don't shiver or anything like that. The breathing technique is essentially you breathe in for 4 seconds and then breathe out for 6 seconds. And it is really as simple as that. And it just helps melt all that tension away. I found doing it with the ice bath and getting used to being uncomfortable, like in the ice bath, that's what made all the difference. So now when I do feel a bit uncomfortable and a bit tense out the back before a fight, I just do that, and I have that kind of little switch in my brain now where I can just turn all that negative energy off.
Nice.
I'm not usually a big believer in this kind of stuff. It always seems a bit like voodoo to me, but I did it the first time and I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't.
Well, it's physiology, isn't it? It's mad. Like the whole human body, it can be controlled, and so that's what it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when I was sitting in the ice bath and I just felt I was quite warm in there, I was quite happy, I was quite comfortable, I was splashing around, I couldn't believe it. I was like, Jesus Christ, how the fuck can I sit in an ice bath and feel like I felt like I was sitting in a hot tub, you know?
Yeah.
Good, and it was just weird.
Nah, mate, that's quality to hear, though, mate. That is great. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you've got a busy day ahead. So, what have you actually got planned? I know you're doing a bit of travelling in a little bit.
I'm headed to one of my sponsors, my osteopath, Jim Herden, with Live Long at Hintle Barn in Hintlesham. I've got a session with him just to take care of some aches and pains from after the fight. But also, they wanted to do an interview with me, and they're going to record it about the Wim Hof method, just because it's helped me so much in my last few fights. So they wanted to sort of get that on video so they can use that and sort of put that out there as well, just to show how much it can help people. So it'd be good to get that out there.
Nice, mate. And do you use the Wim Hof method, like, you know, that walk from backstage to the ring? Do you use it there as well, or when you're in the cage? Or
yeah, use it there. I use it in the cage a little bit. Just whenever I start feeling that tension, as soon as I start feeling it come on, that nervous energy burning, I just do a few breaths like that. You know, sometimes I only need to do 2 or 3 of them, and I can literally just feel it all just melting away.
Nice, mate. And what about in the middle of the fight? Obviously, I know you're focused on that fight. You know, what about when you get that little burst of adrenaline and stuff? How are you controlling that?
With the adrenaline during the fight, because I haven't had that nervous energy before the fight, I don't really have that sort of adrenaline dump anymore.
Yeah.
And with that, we sort of do this little reminder we do when we're sparring, so we do it in the fight. Whenever we get to a position where we're set there, whether it's against the cage or whether it's in side control, whatever it is, you get to a position, just take 2 or 3 breaths there, just hold that position, 2 or 3 breaths, think about what you're going to do, and then go from there, you know, as opposed to trying to scramble everywhere all the time and non-stop movement. So we just tend to try and slow things down a little bit. We're in that kind of place.
Mate, great way of thinking about it. I'm looking forward to seeing. I'll be watching you now. Your next fight, I'll be watching. Is he doing his breath? Is he doing his breath? I'll be there keeping an eye on it, mate. But look, Jim, I really do appreciate the time. I know you've got a busy day, but we will definitely be having a little catch up about your next news, your fight news.
Definitely, mate. No problem. Thanks for having us on.
Cool. Cheers, Jim, mate. Have a good one.